is Jackson Gilbert. I am a journalist from Tanzania, and I'm specifically working with Tanzania Broadcasting Corporation, TBC. I am a researcher, an author of this book, which is called AFRIKA MYPIA, but I am purely Pan-Africanist. I believe in African unity and African development. So in short, I am a journalist, I am a researcher, and an author of books. AFRIKA MYPIA means New Africa. So when you see AFRIKA MYPIA, vikwazo vya maendeleo na njia za ukombozi means New Africa, obstacles to development, and its paths to liberation. So what inspired me is that I want to see Africa is developing. I want to see some changes in Africa. I want to see the number of resources that we have, they are relating with the kind of development that we have. Africa is the blessed continent. It is a blessed continent with a lot of resources. We have cobalt, we have gold, we have diamond, we have Tanzanite, maybe for example in Tanzania. So, but the development that we have comparing to resources are absolutely different. So the most thing which inspired me to is to see Africa is developing based on the resources that we have, but also resources. We are talking, of course, we are also talking about human resources. You know, Africa is having more than 1 billion people, and the research and data shows young people below 25 are many, more than 60%. So Africa is the blessed continent with so many young people. But also in Africa, we have so many potential areas which are suitable for cultivation, like more than 6% of our land suitable for cultivation is found in Africa. So things which inspired me to see or to look or to campaign or to move for New Africa, I want to see development in Africa and to make some sort of comparison between what we have and how we are. Sometimes this is one of the very nice experience for me, and I actually had some different experiences. As you know, writing about Africa, it's something huge. So most of people think that as a youth, they don't think if this topic can be written by someone, young man or women. So it was very difficult for me. Sometimes you need to do a lot of research, and you need to prove people that you can. You do some research, of course you are writing something. So one of the challenge that I got is people wondering how me, young guy, young man, write this kind of topic. This is a very difficult thing. Most of people, they are thinking that this should be written by someone senior, or a senior citizen, a senior public worker and stuff, but I managed to do that. But another challenge is, this book is very direct. We are talking about the truth. So sometimes you can face some critical reflection on people who don't want to see those changes. So, but for people who want to see changes, they are okay with this book and it's very helpful. But for people who don't want changes in Africa, sometimes they get confused that why are you writing this? But actually, this is very important, for you to liberate Africa, for you to bring changes in Africa, we must tell the truth that Africa must develop. Africa must stand by its own feet. Of course, I got some support, but not financial. Financially, I struggled myself, and I'm still struggling because I want to translate this book in English, and I have already started, but I need someone to proofread it and to help me to print out different English versions book. So I'm still looking for the support and sponsors for me who can help me to get that. But talking about the support, I did a lot of interviews, talking to Pan-Africanists, talking to researchers, senior journalists, professors, doctors. So they supported me. You know, someone accepted the interview with me. It's something very, very, very good for me. So I got that support of people accepted my interview, but also I got some support. You know, I had to meet some people in different debate, in different discussion, different meeting about Africa. Yeah, so I got those support. People supported me to give me some ideas and stuff. But also I had to find someone who can proofread linguistic and stuff. I also got that person, although I paid him. But this is also a support for me. I want to see Africa is moving higher. I want to see new Africa. I want to see Africa is developing. I want to see Africa which is changing. I want to see Africa which is aligning with the vision Africa 2063, Africa we want. So I will never stop preaching the gospel of Africa, that Africa must change, Africa must develop, Africa must solve their own problems, Africa must preserve and protect their resources, Africa must make sure that they protect. You know, we have been exposed to Africa impossibility more often. But what I believe, what is my wisdom, is Africa can do anything. So we need to campaign for the African development. For example, Africa is bigger. I have my friend in Europe. She is believing that Africa is the country, not continent. Because of Makata projection, because of the world map, Africa is very small comparing to Greenland. But in reality, Africa is bigger 14 times than Greenland. But you see how we have been exposed to impossibility more often. But also, Africa can be united. It is necessary for me to go in other countries without visas. And I'm glad that Ghana yesterday did that. But I want to see Africa free movement, no visas in African continent. I want to see Africa is growing higher. I want to see the Africa which was actually uh, proposed by Kwame Nkrumah, by Julius Nyerere, by Jomo Kenyatta, and other Pan-Africanists. So I want to see that Africa. I want to see Africa is growing higher. I want to see African people are developing. I want to see African scholars come in Africa and develop the continent. It is very weird to see African scholars, they are working in Europe, they are working in America, but we still have problem in Africa. I want to see Africa with a permanent seat in United Security Council, that we sit together, we solve problems. So if people who are not part and parcel of Africa are sitting down and sort out African problem, that is a very big challenge. How can we liberate ourselves if at all we don't have a permanent seat in United Security Council? In Africa has got so many people, has got more number of representatives in United Nations, more than 50 countries are representative in United Nations. So I want to see Africa is growing higher, Africa is developing, new Africa, AFRIKA MYPIA. So I want to tell young people that they have to really work hard. They have to preach the gospel of Africa. They have to tell our own stories. You know, African stories has been told by people with Eurocentric views. But young people in Africa are exposed in Africa in possibility more often. You know, nowadays, the battle is not in physical contact. The battle is in technology. I want to see young African people are innovating, are creative, are preaching the gospel of Africa development. And this is how we can develop Africa. If at all we don't think about Africa development as young people, we won't see Africa we want, Agenda 2063. So I really encourage young people, young men and women to join together in New Africa movement, this movement, so that we can fight for Africa development. That is only way that we can liberate Africa. And again, Africa young people must think about how we can organize together. the first generation of Julius Nyerere, Kwame Nkrumah, was there to fight for independence, and they have done that. What about us young people? What about nowadays Gen Zs? We have to do something very great to make sure that we have our own independence, we have our own freedom, but we must do something extraordinary. We need to fight for our economy, we need to fight for our future, we need to fight for our technology. And nowadays, freedom is not about waving flags. It's about industries which promote or which provide employment. It's about young people who provide innovations and not to sell African resources at a cheaper price.